Okay, why don't we start, if that's okay with you. And so welcome to Build. Actually, I'm going to say welcome to Mini Mix, for those of you who and there is a place for designers. I am not going to show any code. There's nothing I could teach you about code. But maybe what I want to talk about is, given that you already know how to write code, that what you might write and what things you might want to think about going forward from the design and so on. And I'm going to start with a few finger exercises just to clear the mind from the keynote, not because you want to clear the keynote out of your mind, but just to start on a different path. So I'm going to just do a few things. So I'm going to start with this one and I kind of like cars and design and so on and so forth. And so here's a car. And I want to start with a question. So this is the audience participation part. How many motors does that car have? This is the question, yeah. 2. Starter motor and the engine motor. How about your car, by the way? It's not a hybrid, by the way. Right. Okay, so that car has probably about 30 motors. This is the one that's obvious. If you have that car was designed in 1962, so it's an Avanti, but your car probably has about 100 motors. And they're mostly electric motors. The clock, for example. And the point is this. Your parents or your grandparents, depending on how old you are, used to go to the store and buy electric motors. You needed to buy one. You needed to hook them on the workbench, put a belt on them to drive the tools that they were working with. And I suspect very few of us have ever gone to the store and bought a motor. In fact, we probably would have to think twice to know where to go to do so. And so when we buy a car, we are sort of conscious of the main driving engine, whether it's electric or the main electric engine. But we just take the other stuff for granted. We don't care. I'm buying windows that open and close. I'm not buying a motor. And so it's an interesting observation about where we focus and how we think about things. And the same thing comes here. So here's a snap from the keynote yesterday, just about the start menu. And I guess I'd say, well, here's the question. What's the interaction language? What do we call the interaction language for Windows 8, 8.1? Pardon? Modern, okay. That's what it is. So that must be what it is, because that's what we've heard. And the same thing on the phone. It's also modern. And for those of you who are retro, you can call it Metro. But anyhow, the thing that's really interesting about that is to say, well, let's think about what we saw yesterday morning. And okay, there it is on the robot, on the Mindstorm, and it is, but I don't know about you, but that doesn't look right. That's wrong. When you have modern in the wrong place, it's not right, and yet that is a Microsoft Surface slate. And in fact, this is far more, if you want to talk about natural interaction and natural style and natural design, this is the character of the robot. That belongs. And yet it's still Surface, it's still running in Windows 8. And so just playing with some examples that we've seen is just that, yes, there is this sort of brand identity around modern and the grid and so on and so forth. But the other part is that it's very clear that if you have it there when it's performing the role it's intended, it's wrong. And so the question isn't, is the interaction language of Windows 8 modern, and is it multi-touch, pen, maybe connect, but eyes? It could be very different depending on the context. We'll dive in this a bit deeper, but again, I'm just playing with things aren't necessarily what they appear. And the same thing was with this program. So the Project Spark, which reminded me of some stuff we used to do when I was at a company called Alias, something called Paint Effects, if any of you are Maya users, where you could paint with nature as opposed to with a color. And so there was something really interesting going on with this, that I loved this demo, and I'm not sure how many of you caught or zoomed in on the particular detail that grabbed me. And it was this, that well, it grabbed me especially because I'm pencil challenged. My wife is a professional painter, my eldest son is a designer, and they can draw anything in proportion without hatching, just bang, bang, bang. I can't do that. What I can do is I can sort of do an arch and draw a line. That's a skill I have. So the question is what's the power of that skill? What can you articulate with it, and how far can you go? And the interesting thing about this, and something that was in common with paint effects, a guy named Duncan Brinsme did back about 15 years ago, was you're not painting with a color, you're painting with a forest, with a particular type of vegetation or texture that's a three-dimensional texture. And furthermore, if you put a virtual fan on it, the same way you put fan on the paint program you get with your slate, instead of drying the paint, it'll actually make the grass blow and so on, because you can have physical dynamics of these 3D objects because you're painting properties as well as the shape. What that really says is that for the same skill that it would level in demands of just painting a single line of a particular color, I can actually paint a landscape if I have a different kind of palette and a different type of logic behind the brush. And what this is basically saying is that it's what we all know about hierarchy, that we can build higher semantics by hierarchy and assign them to the same gesture. The gesture has the same load and weight learning, but the output is just incredibly richer. And so this is a theme from yesterday I want to bridge to where I'm going, is that the notion that I can make things simpler and yet do things that are way more complex. I mean, in terms of the result, not in terms of the effort and with the burden it puts on the user, if I use the appropriate technology. So these three examples sort of pull into this thing that I love, this line from Marcel Proust, where, of course, you knew you were going to get quotes from Proust coming here this morning. But the only true voyage of discovery is not to go to new places, but to have other eyes. In some sense, my objective today is to try and say, let's look at the things that are right in front of us, the things that are right there, like your car, and remind ourselves that what appears to be there isn't only one perception of reality. It appears to have one motor. It has multiple motors. It appears to be a simple paint program. No, it's a rich thing. We can paint landscapes. It's a whole new definition to landscape painting, right? That landscape's on the palette, not on the canvas. And the same thing about what's the face of windows. And from that, we can start to look with other eyes and maybe rethink what we do and how we approach it. Now, the roots of where I want to take this from is from where a very influential part of my own roots. And back around 1989 in particular, the relationship started in 87, but I was working in Cambridge, England, and Mark was working at Park. But as of 89, I started working very closely with Mark Weiser, who is, in this famous Scientific American article, basically framed the whole notion of what has become, well, actually he coined the term ubiquitous computing. And ubiquitous computing is, and the reason this is relevant is that after 22 years, it's actually happening. We're in the midst of it. It's there. And I'll give you some examples. But I think it's really important to say, okay, it took us 22 years to get where we are, but he was right about a number of things, and it's worth revisiting some of what he said. And this notion about ubiquitous computing has two attributes. First of all, the computation is everywhere. Now, it doesn't mean absolutely everywhere there's a computer. That's nonsense, just as having everything everywhere all the time in every form. No, the right thing at the right place at the right time, in the right form for the right person at the right price. That makes more sense. That's doable. Of course, you have to know what right is. But the notion that things are everywhere, ubiquity. But the second part is more intangible, but is more interesting in this notion of transparency. Some people say the technology should be invisible. No, it's transparent. That's a different thing. You can see the dining room table when you go into your dining room, but you don't pay much attention to it unless it's loaded with food that you want to eat. But it belongs there. If you moved the same table into the bathroom or into the kitchen or into your bedroom, you would notice it. It would be an intrusion. It would just be wrong. And so it's the same thing. Where's the right place and the right form? And what's the right size for the context? Because when things are everywhere, that means it's really easy to make the kind of mistake where I put the kitchen or the dining room table in the bedroom and the toilet in the living room. Right? We can do that. It just probably isn't a very good thing to do. But in the house, we have guidelines. We know when and what, where, and why, and how. But in what the technologies that are evolving, these things are less obvious, so therefore we have to pay attention. So the nature of thinking about things in this way, about ubiquitous computing, a lot of these things, just like electric motors, and that's why Mark used that example and why I like using it, is that it's right in front of us and we just don't even notice it, because when ubiquitous computing works, you don't even notice there's a computer there. So you can look at, this is just a collection of some of the things I just quickly came up with, but there's tons of them like that. But your GPS, your digital SLR, your sewing machine, your fuel pump, that's a pretty good example. A gasoline pump is a multimodal, multimedia, interactive computer that has credit card in and grip in and fuel out. And what's really interesting about it is you think about it at that level of abstraction, that means that when I get out and I'm fueling it myself and I'm right beside the terminal, which has my credit card already, and I have to keep holding the thing. In Canada, anyhow, you can't. They don't allow you to put the locks on the grips. You've got me locked. So why am I not filling it up with MP3 files as well as petrol? It's just a delivery system. And why restrict it? Once we understand it as a generic form, why is it just doing it with petrol? Why? And if it can recognize my car, why isn't it saying, hey, you're low on fluid, the car just told me that you need air in the tires, when was the last time you got it serviced, you should check your oil. I mean, there's this whole other thing that sort of says when the car can talk, by the way, your car being the most expensive computer you ever bought, a third of the cost of the car is in the computer in it, but the point is they're not talking to each other. And you're an opportunity, this is a time and place to do certain things. It has knowledge, and why not? This is what we're starting to get at. It's not about just populating the space with these things. It's where they are in the space, what they know about what they are, the sense of identity, and what they might want to know about the other things that happen to wander into their space and how they might leverage each other. So I want to talk about this in the sense of what's going on right now. And so this is my super duper fast history of interactive computing. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to tell you that there's 3 phases to interactive computing. And furthermore, with each phase, there is a miracle. And so I'm going to give you 3 phases, 3 miracles, and I'm going to tell you something that I think is true and actually quite worrying about this, but also where there's worry, there's also opportunity. So the first phase would be around 1975. Take your pick up and down, and maybe just arbitrarily, here's the Altair computer. And this is actually a really interesting device, right? Because it had no monitor, it had no keyboard, it had no network, and you programmed by toggling switches. And you really just programmed the register, stepped the register, and did some more. And people bought it and thought they'd died and gone to heaven. Well, certain kinds of people, and some of you might be that person. So, but the miracle was, starting around then, that it worked and people were actually going to pay money for it. And happy to do so, and felt they got good value. And this is exactly the same period a little bit later when many of us felt like we died and gone to heaven because we had a text editor and a keyboard, and it didn't matter that it crashed every 60 seconds because we just saved the buffer every 30 seconds, and we, again, felt, wow, we're lucky for the privilege of dealing with this thing. Gradually, we got used to it and we got more and more bugged when it crashed, and we started to expect it to work. And that's when we'd gotten to the end of the life cycle of phase 1, but we just didn't know it. And then we got this rude awakening, and it was called the iPhone in 2007. And so the iPhone introduced, I would argue, a whole new paradigm to of the nature of interaction. One that we knew in the labs, there was lots of evidence for it, but in terms of broad commercial deployment, this thing changed things, and they deserve to get credit for it. But there was nothing new about it. There was no new functionality. The miracle wasn't multi-touch. The iPhone would have been successful even if it had single touch. That wasn't what it was. It was the flow. It wasn't where you were or what you could do. It was how you did it and how you could move from one thing to another. That was the magic. It started to be analog instead of digital. It wasn't poke, poke, poke. It was glide, slide. You know, maybe it's because I'm Canadian and like ice hockey. you kind of skated over the damn thing. It was cool. And then that had a huge impact. And we start to expect that. And of course, this miracle has to be, and that's why I've drawn it this way, sits on the back, on top of, on the shoulders of the miracle number one. It has to work, it has to have value, and it has to flow. And so we move to the third phase, and this is what we're already on the outskirts of that, but where I think we'll be in there full on by certainly 2015, in a couple of years. And I could have used, besides this image, I could have just used the previous slide where I had all these little gadgets and so on. It would have been the same, have to make the same point. But the key thing here is things work together. So again, in the accumulation of these miracles, it has to work. People want it, has to have value. People want to buy it. It has to flow, but that's not sufficient. Things have to work together. And they don't now. And that's, again, one of these things that's either an opportunity, but it's also an issue if we don't take advantage of it. Let's give you an example. So where have we been? This is very closely an approximation to my office. I have a keyboard and a mouse and a display. So then you add another display. Okay, that's okay, because it's on the same machine. There's no coordination. They just slide it across, just calibrate it once. Everything's hunky-dory, and we're happy. But then I have a phone. I put my phone, it's my phone, it's running Windows, it's beside a Windows machine. They have no idea that each other exist. I can't use the touch screen on the phone to control the display without doing a bunch of gymnastics. And then what happens when I have a perceptive pixel display on the wall? Every one of these things now starts becoming a freestanding computational entity that has to exist and have a life of its own. But when they come together, they make the worst band in the world, right? In terms of, and I don't care, this isn't about Windows, this is about the industry in general. And then if I add my slate, and I want to have that, life becomes even more problematic. And the coordination of these things is really, really an issue, that they are islands that are close together and just don't have a great deal to do with each other, much less know about each other, the cloud notwithstanding. And anyhow, if you drive across the country, you might notice that only about 60% or less of the United States even has 4G, much less anything else where you can get data. I'd say only 60% has cell coverage. So this brings us to a real problem, and this is Buxton's incredibly famous and important crackerjack principle. Now, not all of you are from North America, so I have to explain. This is caramel-covered popcorn and peanuts. And the miracle about this product is that the popcorn and peanuts don't stick together. That they're all loose and fluffy, and that's because they put oil in it. That's the secret of the magic ingredient, by the way. But in 1896, they trademarked the little sailor guy, and they also trademarked their tagline. Does anybody know what is everybody who goes to the ball game knows what Cracker Jack, the tagline is? Come on, somebody has to know. One of them is there's a prize in every box. And the other one? By the way, some of the prizes from around 1906 are worth more than the slate you just got. Think about that for a minute. Will the stylus of your slate be worth that much money in 100 years? The more you eat, the more you want. 1896, trademark. Okay, it's copywritten. So the point is this. That's what's happening right now. We're in this crackerjack situation where it's great. I mean, there's this fantastic success that the iPhone led in that everybody followed, and we're all making all these gadgets, and a lot of the gadgets that were in that slide, the matrix I showed you, are the result of that. And there's more and more coming. People are making more apps, more devices to have those apps. They're coming all over. They're everywhere. And just like Cracker Jacks, you keep eating them because they're so great. We love them so much. In a certain part, we're starting to get full, but they keep coming, and oh man, I still got to have more and more, and I'm going to keep consuming, and at a certain point, I'm just going to be sick and throw up. And then I'm not going to touch Cracker Jacks for a really long time. And you don't want that to happen because you're the one who's making a living from creating those things. And so are we. And the consumers aren't happy. Oh, and you're also a consumer of these things. See that camera you're taking a picture of me with? That's one of those things. How do we deal with that? So the question is, how do we avoid people getting sick? How do we avoid the situation where we keep making things till we hit a wall and then the bottom falls out? How do we make it so that it can continue to grow without crossing some line that is no longer sustainable? And the point I want to say is that, to give you a hint before we get to I'm going to give you a little hint to where we're going, is that it's got a huge amount to do with complexity. And that's why I showed the issue of the paintbrush. That there's a case where we saw in the keynote where you can start to do something. If you do it right, you can wrangle that complexity, which is the cause of us getting sick and things becoming unmanageable, if we do it right. And that's where I'm going with this. So here's how the complexity thing works, is that there is this thing. Sometimes I call it God's law. Some people call it the complexity barrier, or you might just call it the threshold of frustration. I don't care what you call it, but there's this thing that basically says we're human beings. We don't have any more brain cells today than we had yesterday. In fact, from what I hear, some of you have probably fewer today than you had yesterday. And the same thing is that the neurons don't fire any faster. We don't learn any faster, and so on and so forth. We don't run much faster. We're kind of in a rut. You can get a little bit of variation. There's a little bit of individual variations. But we have to live underneath that level or we're gone. So what's happened is, what the iPhone and what followed in phase 2 did is it said we got really good. We started to take design seriously. And we started to really take the human, the user, seriously. And the complexity of any single device has gone way down. We've made serious strides. At Microsoft, at Apple, Android, everybody in the industry is working on that. They get it. And the consumer wins, and the better that one company does, that pushes all the rest of us just through competitive forces to get better at it. And that's the great part about competition. But here's the problem. Because of us getting so good at this, that creates the more you eat, the more you want kind of situation. And what gets lost in all of this is that the cumulative complexity of a whole bunch of simple, wonderful, desirable things still takes us across that boundary. And that's where we hit the wall of where you get sick on the Cracker Jack principle. That's how this thing works. Now, if you want to see an example of this, because the future's already here, it's just not uniformly distributed, look no further than your home theater. By the way, this is not a staged. I'm getting better as a photographer, I think, because people don't believe that I took this picture and that those really are the things. But I was photographing my collection, so I went to where the projector is, grabbed all the remote controls and just put them in my light box and shot that. Those are my real ones. And I have to tell you, I know how to use any one of those, but there is nobody in my family, including my children, that know how to do anything practically other than turn it on, the basic functionality. They are almost never used because it's chaos. And I can be in Europe, my wife will phone me from the cabin because she's got friends there, wants to watch a movie, and I have to tell her over the phone how to turn it on. And I know that everybody here has had that experience in one way or another. And all I want to say is, this is an example of what I'm talking about, and this is such the tip of the iceberg. It isn't funny. This is simple compared to what we're heading towards at breakneck speed because of our very success and because of the very momentum we're creating. And so I just want to point out that this was a gradual thing. And so you come and you say, well, we started off with a black and white TV. And then Zenith in particular started to bring in the remote control. The first remote controls were wonderful. I mean, think about this for a minute. You just added another device to this device you already had. It cost money to manufacture, and the original remote control had an on-off switch. It had a channel changer and a volume control. It used ultrasonic. That's why it was called a clicker. It really made sounds because you banged these things. That's one of the ones in my collection there. But the point is this. There wasn't a single control in that wasn't already on the TV. So what's the point? Right? It's just extra money to do the same thing you could already do. Interesting. Redundancy, added cost, and yet when you added the right thing at the right device in the right place at the right time, it saved you getting up, changed the transaction cost, and by changing the transaction cost to do what you could already do with the device you already had, you not only completely screwed up the advertising industry because they had to make commercials shorter, they had to change how they shot them to keep your attention. There was collusion amongst all of the channels to agree to schedule their commercials at the same time. So if you jump from one channel to another because of a commercial, originally you used to be able to do that. You can't anymore because they all put them at the same time just because they say you got to watch a commercial. Doesn't care whose it is, but we're going to help each other out here. But the speed of editing also changed the pace at which the content was cut. Because those fast-moving commercials drove faster-moving cutting, shorter shots, more action shots in the programming. And that changed our whole perception of how the pace of a cinematic form should be. And that even moved to the movies where there are no commercials. Just by putting a second volume control and a second channel changer on the same device. So we can have huge impact. So this was the iPhone. This is the thing that changed. It sort of said, and yet, now it worked pretty well. Let's add more features to it. Let's make it more. Now let's have a flip top so there's even more buttons there. Now let's add 5 of them. It's going to get better, right? We're adding features. It's just feature creep gone wild, right? This is devices gone wild. So it doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. So what do we do? So I think there's a couple rules that I would take, and if I was king of the world, this is what I would say. I would say, first of all, the first rule is this. Every new product and service must provide great experiences at excellent value. It has to work, and it has to be flow. It has to meet the first 2 miracles, and it has to do that well. And if that's all you can do, don't do it. I don't care how many you can sell, you shouldn't do it because it's not scalable. It doesn't last. You want a business, not a doodad. And if you don't want to have who wants to be known for building doodads, right? I guess it depends on what you sell them for, but still, if you're smart enough to do that, why not make something of substance that will keep your grandchildren in the comfort that they'd like to be kept, or keep you. That's what I'm working for now, actually, as my grandson, is to make it so that he can keep me in my old age. But the second thing you need to do is, as well as that, you have to make sure that every new service, product, or device that you make increases the value of everything else you already have and reduces the complexity. And all of them increase the value and reduce the complexity of the thing you just acquired. And this is a really important point. Now, if you paid attention to the keynote today and yesterday, it was a sub-theme that nobody really pushed on in the way I am going to. But you'll notice that essentially there was a sub-thing of thinking about our technologies in an ecological sense. And I don't just mean Microsoft products work with Microsoft products. That's a walled garden. Those days are gone. We know that from Betamax, VHS. We know that from the music industry before MIDI. We know that about local area networks and so on. It has to work across. And that's why you'll see in the tools and so on, there's been this conversation today, for example, about working with the other platforms. In fact, if we want to win over Android customers and we want to win over Macintosh customers, the best way to do it is have their stuff work better in our environment. No holds barred, no barriers. That makes way more sense than trying to tell them that just makes sense. But the point here is that it seems to me that if we don't do this second rule, and we don't set the bar that high, we're selling ourselves short, and we're selling our customers short, and we're absolutely selling our investors short because it's going to come crashing down because of the burden of the accumulated complexity of these simple things, no matter how good they are individually. Now, this notion, it sounds like, okay, here you say, okay, well, you had me for a while, but this notion that by adding more devices I reduce complexity, give me a break. Put up or shut up. So I put up. Because, again, I keep coming back. History teaches us that this is possible. And my favorite example is, here's my phone, and here's my car. And that literally is the rendering of the model of car I drive. And I bought it not because I drank some Kool-Aid or something like that, but because I was really curious to know how sync worked and how it worked with the phone, because I didn't like how my wife's car worked with her phone or my phone. So what's interesting about this is, I mentioned this before, that car, a third of the cost is in the information systems. The cabling harness alone provides with the engine for the most expensive component in the vehicle. $30,000 vehicle, actually it's not a $30,000 vehicle, but pretend it is, $10,000 personal computer. You bought it without knowing what the processor is, how fast it is, how much memory, or what the operating system is. Interesting for a geek. Now, and I'm not alone, as that embarrassed laugh makes clear. So the point is this, I get in the car, I throw my phone, which actually I forgot to turn off, but what the heck, nobody calls me. I'm lonely. I throw it in the passenger seat, start driving, you call me. Turns off the stereo. Up you come, we can talk. What's the interaction language for the phone? You told me before it was Metro or Modern. It's not anymore, right? The interaction language changed. It changed to speech in, speech out for me to answer all this type of thing. So we're now talking. We hang up. Music comes back on. You text me. Some woman I've never met interrupts my broadcast of my favorite piece of music and says, there's a text for you. What would you like me to do? Read it, save it, or delete it? Because it's you, I'm going to take it. She reads it to me. I think it's pretty nice of her. I've never met her. And then I can respond, off it goes, and away we go. Again, no touch screen, no eyes. If I am using Modern, that is a touch screen in my eyes, my fingers in my eyes, while I'm driving my car, that is the thing that most people say is the interaction language for this device, I should lose my driver's license. Interesting. I keep going. You call me. We're chatting away, having a grand old time. I get to where I'm going. I turn off the car. I pick up the phone, and we just keep talking. There's a couple of things that are really interesting in all of this. First, where's the phone when I'm in the car? Anywhere, right. You're catching on. I shouldn't give you the first two tests, or three. The only right answers, I think, are, it doesn't matter. Yes, everywhere. But if anybody says this is the phone, they just don't understand. I have this theory that nobody should be allowed to work on mobile who thinks they know what mobile is. You're unqualified the minute, because it puts blinders on. But the thing is that when we're in the car, the only parts of this that are being used is the SIM chip, the Bluetooth chip, the battery, and a little bit of logic. The rest of everything else is in the car. And so that's where the answer is yes. It's everything. And we already said that the interaction language changed completely from something that's eyes demanding and fingers demanding to something which is speech and mouth and ears demanding. So here's the miracle to me, that when I got out of the car and carried on my conversation with you, 100% of the interaction language changed as seamlessly as the call gets transferred from cell tower to cell tower, and 90% of the hardware servicing the call locally changed. So I've got a 90% change in the hardware, 100% change in interaction language, and because of those huge inconsistencies, I have complete consistency of conversation. It's only about the conversation. It's only about that. And I would argue that that is a good example where combining multiple technologies in the right place at the right time in the right way with intelligent design, that we can in fact reduce complexity and make the technology disappear. It becomes about the conversation, not about the device. And we'll talk more about this, but I want to capture some of the attributes of what I just spoke about. There's two things that are going on here. One is at the technological basis, and the other is going to be at the service of the functional basis. On the technological basis, what is demanded, if we're going to meet this criteria of the second challenge of if we're good criterion for making new apps, namely working together, I think they have to have this attribute, that you need to have seamless aggregation and disaggregation of the devices. That seamlessness of coming together and apart, just like how seamless my phone just disaggregated from the car, and this thing that used to be, you can't separate what's the phone when I'm in the car with these devices, and yet when I'm away, the car still works as well as a car, the phone still works well as a phone, the stereo goes back to just being a stereo in the car. Everybody has a nice state, all that's seamless. The second thing is there is an associated gracefulness in the augmentation or degradation of the service, of the functionality, which must be there, or else we are just, again, stacking more and more apps and having feature creep. So here's the part, is how do you keep the balance in a reasonable way? And it's, of course, application context specific. So as a first approximation, you'd say when I bring two things together, obviously I'm going to accumulate more capabilities, there's more technology, so there is going to be augmentation of capabilities associated with the aggregation of two devices. Makes sense. Likewise, if I take things apart, there's less technology there, so therefore probably it's going to do less. So I have a degradation associated with the disaggregation. And as reasonable as that is, it's wrong, as a rule. Sometimes that happens, but in fact, there's as much degradation that comes with the aggregation as there is augmentation that comes with the disaggregation. For example, when the phone comes to the car, we have that aggregation brings about joint forces to give me way better speech input and output because I can have way more power in the car. But I can't play Angry Birds. I can't play solitaire. I'd say 70 or 80% of the phone capabilities in the apps on there are completely useless. I can't use them, nor should I. So it's appropriate. And so it just basically becomes from a weak general device to a strong specific device, strong for the purpose that's known because of the context where these technologies come together. So that gives me the guidelines. Where? So wearable computing is really important, except wearable is spelled with an H as a second letter, right? Compliments of my wife. She taught me that one, which cracks me up and actually breaks my heart. To know that a painter just absolutely nailed me. Now, the same thing happens is that when I get way more functionality when I come apart, but the speech capability's gone down. So this notion, that's how you maintain the balance of complexity, by taking advantage of location, and by location you know the intent, and then away we go. Here's a really quick, a dumb story. Okay. Has anybody not had this experience? I'll use my name, but substitute your name where I say Bill. Bill, you're always on your damn computer. In your home, does that have any resonance at all? All right. Did you ever hear your mother, for example, say to your father, my father's name was also Bill, Bill, you're always on your pencil? All right, now that's funny because it's so sad we have to laugh, because there is no activity for which I use a computer that my father didn't do and that he didn't use a pencil. All of the activities I do with the computer, he did with a pencil, and furthermore, the pencil was just as prevalent in those activities as the computer is to mine. The point was, there was a different location for everything, and there were other artifacts around that made the activity visible, and the pencil faded into the activity. But if the only thing you see is the computer and everything looks, my wife can't tell whether I'm booking a trip to take her to the south of France, or playing Angry Birds, or paying her income tax, writing the great Canadian novel, or working, when I should be helping her do the dishes or cook. I should be cooking a meal for her, right? But it's totally not visible. And so this is one of the other constructs about this. When we have different devices, this is one of the gifts that ubiquitous computing gives us, is that if the technology and the services are distributed in the appropriate place and the appropriate forms, all of a sudden our activities start to become visible again. And we can restore that sense of normalcy to our home, and we don't, or in the middle of this, get interrupted by an email that takes me off and all of a sudden I'm doing work, and I had no intention. By the way, the great Canadian novel just lost another chapter. Right? And all of us have had that. It's this distraction part. We actually, by adding more technology, can reduce the distraction and bring this visibility and increase the social part of our home. Now, what I do want to say about these things here is that notice, this is the key part, and this was the magic when we two had when I got out of the car, when we were in the middle of our conversation. The aggregation, disaggregation, the augmentation, degradation are transitions. They're not states of being. And the seamlessness and the gracefulness are the qualities of those transitions. This should remind you of the flow of the iPhone. The iPhone worked because of the flow. The flow was all about transitions, but it was a transitions amongst apps within the device. All we're doing is going meta. We're going up to one more level and saying exactly the same value can occur if we can maintain that type of flow through the transitions with similar attention to quality of the qualities of the transitions. And that's the key part. It's not about just functionality. It's not about I can have it hooked up here, I can have it hooked here. No, it has to have the same gracefulness as any of the touch gestures you have with a Kinect or with an iPhone or with any of these other devices. And that's the part where we are sorely lacking. What we have seen as an undercurrent in all the keynotes is this notion that on the Windows 8, nobody's sort of zoned in on it. But the notion is that the infrastructures to make things work together are starting to happen. But not fast enough. I've already touched on the car and the phone. But if my phone can hook up to my car seamlessly with all of these properties, I really have to ask myself, I have that camera, it's an EOS 5D, and it just drives me nuts that if I want to send a picture at Instagram, I can't just put my phone together and have it coupled as closely to with my really expensive camera so I can take actually a decent photograph and send it to you instead of, I know the camera in your phone is pretty good, but if it was good enough, why would you have a digital SLR? Certainly not because you like carrying a big monster like that around, especially if you're climbing. But I carry my ski pack when I'm climbing up because I can take better photographs. I just can't share them with anybody till I'm off in some other place, right? Even though I've got my phone right there, I can't do it. It's silly. Why not? It's nuts. Same thing with your slate. Why on God's earth do you need to buy a slate that has G4 chip in it if you've got a phone? You're already paying that phone bill. It's right there. Put the two things together. Bingo. Now you can do it I can do that with my Windows 8 phone to my Windows 8 slate. It's really hard to do. And our dear friends of the carriers will charge you 4 times as much for exactly the same data as if you send the same thing from the phone. So it's not just a technological thing. The restructure here, I'm not trying to pick on the carriers. I'm just saying that to achieve ubiquitous computing, it's all about the cost-benefit analysis. And the currencies some are technological, some are design in terms of effort, and others are financial, having to do with the organization of the industry. If we want this thing to come through, we have to hit this at the business, the experience, and the technological level. And that's the complaint. But let's take a look and see how this plays out. I'm going to give you a scenario that's beyond the car, that looks going forward, and show you how all of these things have implications. Here's this guy. He's just coming down the stairs. He's got to get from where he is to where he's going on foot. And so pulls out the phone and pulls out the Maps application and plots a route, tells him he's walking, and so that now he can go. And by the way, it's really crowded. He's downtown Tokyo. He can't read the signs, so luckily he's got this to guide him along. Now, here's the point. Do you know this guy? Have you seen him around? Walking through this train station, down the street, off the airplane, like so. Okay? Are you this guy? I am. Oh, here's the other question. Do you even like this guy? I hate this guy. I hate being this guy, and I hate the technology that makes me be this guy, and I hate the circumstances that put me in the place where I have to be that guy. This is not how to bond yourself to your clients, right? Right. It's just not natural. And by the way, I could be with my wife. I could be with you. We could be continuing our conversation, but I'm too buried like this. I'm stuck in a dog do. I'm tripping over the curves. I'm getting run over by cars because in Japan they drive on the wrong side of the road, and so all my habits look the wrong way. I'm going to get killed because I'm doing this. But it's a great app. All right. Now, here's what you have to ask yourself. Is there anything you can do, no matter what Microsoft does in improving the toolkit, to improve the app to make you not be that guy? No. Is there anything you can do in industrial design to change the form factor of this device? Okay, I'm a more elegant guy. I've got a white phone to piss you off, right? So, I don't want to be that guy. I was at Cannes last week at the Cannes Lions talking to a bunch of advertisers. Everybody from Facebook, all the senior executives from all these companies were saying, mobile's the future, we got to do this. And I got up and sort of said, is mobile important? Everybody puts up their hand. I said, can anybody tell me what mobile is? Half the people at the hand. I said, well, that's pretty strange. You just told me you're going to allocate 20% of your ad buys on mobile, and you don't even know what it is. Or you're too chicken to tell me. I picked on some kid. Says, oh, it's anything that happens with a handset. Wrong. All the rest of the hands came down except for 3 people. One person out of this whole group of industry leaders sort of said, oh, it's if you're ambulatory and you're moving through, if you're moving, it's an activity that you're doing there. That's mobile. Yeah, it's absolutely right. It's the human that's mobile. Who cares about the technology? It's people first. Now, how can we have technology be a prosthetic that lets us do that and yet have the benefits, right? So here's the scenario. That guy's in that picture. I'll point him out to you in a minute, but you don't know, and that's the whole point. Because when he or she pull up the phone and program it, just like you do before you start off on your journey in your car, the phone goes back in the briefcase. And it said, just follow the blinking red light, red dot. And it's going to appear on the left-hand corner of an ad somewhere in your visual field from where you are right now. So what happens is, bingo, little red blinking light. And you just follow the dots. So now I just walk around, phone in the pocket and briefcase. I can look around. Oh, by the way, the ad people love this because I'm imprinting in all the ads because I got to search them to find the dot. Great. But I can also hold a conversation with you. I'm not going to step in the dog do. I'm not going to be holding up the people behind me. I'm not going to look like a jerk. And I can actually enjoy the weather, look around, be human. And when I get to there, the phone and the sign recognize I'm close by, and I just goes on to the next one. I just follow the dots to where I'm going. We turn the entire advertising world on its head in this particular scenario because I now have a pop-up ad that gives me real value on top of the application rather than a pissing off ad on my application that I bear only barely because it gives me something for free. Right? Everything changes. The relationships change. The industry changes. Oh, by the way, there's no need to have cookies or anything like that. You don't need hyper-targeting. Everybody gets it in a way that's clean. We can do that. There's this plan B. And basically, there's the guy. Oh, and that's not the guy. We get rid of him. Right? Now, you can sort of say, okay, I'm not in the advertising business. I'm in the home. I want to do this. I'm in home entertainment. Well, okay, here's the popcorn. Guess what? It's on the screen. You don't have it. You're watching me. So get out of your chair and you just walk to the kitchen. But you don't have me being recorded, so you're going to miss, or the movie you're watching. So as you walk, you have exactly the same thing. Because you've got screens all around. It's ubiquitous computing. There's screens in the kitchen all around. As you walk, the movie you're watching just follows you. If there's no one else in the room, it turns off the TVs behind you. Save the power. Here I am. In the kitchen, making popcorn. Haven't missed a scene. Come back. It follows me. I'm not carrying it. I mean, I could carry a slate. And I could hold the slate while I'm doing the popcorn. We could do that, or we could make it easier so now it's small. But actually, I like big pictures. Right? They're there. They're embedded in the environment. It's exactly the same scenario I just described. Oh, you're somewhere. The phone calls, the speakerphone. You're calling about something in. I need the papers are on my desk, somewhere there. Same thing, I just walk. Continue this. I just keep walking, I'm talking to you because there's microphones. Because Connect has the best what's better, I'll have to tell you, the array microphone in Connect is almost better than the Imager. The array microphone there is the best bargain in the world. You pay $2,000 for that, just for the microphone alone. But you can build those array microphones in, so I can actually have a speakerphone that's embedded in the environment. I don't have to carry anything. My hands are free to work with the papers or whatever we're talking about, and it follows me through the house, and away we go. And I never have to look for the phone. None of these scenarios am I advocating we do. What I am saying is, if you haven't been contemplating these types of solutions to deliver the services, and you've just assumed you're going to do it on here, or on a slate, or on a wall, or have them work together just in its own room, then I'm just saying you might be right, but if you're going to eliminate the types of solutions that I'm talking about, do it conscientiously because you evaluated them, not because you didn't think about them. And then you can probably come to probably something you can live with. And by the way, I'm not suggesting you can do all of this tomorrow. What I am saying is the decisions you make today, for the next quarter, for the next year, if you have this vision ahead of you, you can find out if you're on that trajectory. So try and make a decision that might be 6 to 1 1/2 dozen the other. If you don't take it into account, it might be a 9 to 1 for or against if you do take the longer term. And we can figure that out. You don't have to get to the future tomorrow. You just have to know where you're going. Otherwise, every direction is the right way. And you're just doing Brownian motion. So let's go back to yesterday's keynote and actually this morning's. This is the understated part. And it's actually interesting that Microsoft understates things. But there's a quiet thing going on here. This is a shot that a friend took from me from Cannes. It was created by a company called Weapon 7, but it's called Universe. And we just had over 3 things, like they're sort of like inverse satellite dishes that had a number of surface slates mounted. And they all know where each other were. And there was just an app, and it was a meaningless app in a way, but where you could just come and you could flick something, and it would go sailing across from machine to machine to machine. Now, this morning, towards the last part of the keynote, there was a number of examples like this. So the example with the robot, the little robot machine with the slate, same thing. Smart glass is another example. The key thing that's really neat about this is that it was the sensors, the radios, the near-field communications, and so on, plus, more importantly, the combination of the cloud and some of the other tools that are that Scott and others talked about this morning, are there to change, I'd say by an order of magnitude, better the ease with which we can start to address some of these issues. Not all at once, but we can start down that path. And there's a natural inertia to do what we're best at. That's what we've done before. But what got us to where we are today is not going to take us necessarily where we have to be tomorrow. And so for me, my purpose here today, I can't tell you how to program this stuff. I can't help you with the tools. What I can do is say, try and give you as compelling examples as possible so that you just consider what opportunities are there to make devices work together so that you don't just have a bunch of soloists, but you really have a swinging, just absolutely coherent ensemble. Now, I came back to this notion, and it came up over and over again yesterday and today in the keynotes, this whole notion about the ecology of the technology and so forth. There's a psychologist named Jean Piaget who's one of my heroes, but he's one of the fathers of cognitive psychology. He has this really wonderful definition of intelligence. And his definition of intelligence is this. Intelligence is the ability of an organism to adapt to a changing environment. Again, adaptation is the activity, the ability to adapt to change in the environment. Now, if we know anything, we know that we're in a period of rapid change in terms of what's out there and the tools and so on and so forth, but not just technologically, socially, culturally, in every other way. So the question is, how intelligent are we in terms of how we approach our businesses, our lives, and our future, in terms of what we actually believe and where we want to go? And my sense is, it is this notion at the local level about the transitions. That's adaptation to changing in the local context. The iPhone did it on the context of the device and the ecology of the apps. We come out now to between us in local context, and we can scale it up and scale it up and scale it up. And given that our technologies are not technologies, they are cultural artifacts which are more impactful on the culture and our societies than music, theater, art, cinema, dance, TV, architecture, painting, sculpture, whatever, all put together. It seems to me that bringing those considerations in to actually frame the decisions we make so that we can have great business, have great longevity, but wrangle the technology down and have the benefits of our tools get full potential, that's the situation we're in. The greatest thing about ubiquitous computing, having left phase 1, is this. When I was starting out, in the phase 1, it was, can we make it work? And where we're entering into right now is this other phase, which is actually way more interesting and why I'm more invigorated to stay in the business now than I was even then. Because the question now is, now that we can build anything, what should we build? And my sense is, I can't tell you that. That comes down to your own personal values. But what I can say is, if you start considering the society of devices and think about social computing as including the social relationships of devices, how they come together, how they come apart, and how they behave, superimposed upon a society of people, it's incredible what we have in our power to do if we do it right. And what I would say is, this morning and yesterday, we've had a pretty good revealing of the games have changed in terms of the resources we have to take full advantage of what I'm talking about. So with that, I'm happy to take questions. Thank you very much. So there's microphones, and I know that I'm between you and lunch, so I'm not going to be offended. And half an hour later, but if you want to take me on, just don't ask me anything about Visual Studio. Anybody thinking? Anybody building stuff that want to give me an example of what you're doing today? I'd be really interested if anybody's building things that really work together. I mean, I like that Electronic Arts has this game, right? You can just take an iPad, throw it down, and 4 iPhones, and you can play Scrabble, right? The Nintendo DS. You can have those through. Yeah. Do you feel like going to Mike?
This is an enterprise solution, so I'm sorry it's not home social thing, but we're building a system where if you have a meeting, it figures out where your meeting is, figures out where you are relative to the rooms, looks at all the rooms, tries to figure out the best place to put everybody, and multiple rooms, it all works out naturally. If you have a tablet, while you're walking through the place, we do smart boards.
Yeah.
So as you're walking through the place, the smart boards will tell you where to go, in case you don't know where the meeting is. As you approach them, they automatically adapt to the fact that you've got a tablet or a computer. Your information exchanges automatically. It's all done totally without any interactions. That's the kind of stuff we're doing.
Yeah. No, that's it. There's a really interesting attribute to what he just described, by the way, and that is, because screen real estate was really expensive, computers were really expensive, and your time was really expensive, our almost entire history of computation has been based on supporting foreground intentional actions, things that are right in your focal cone of vision that I'm attending to. I got my full attention, I'm working. And there's this whole other class of interaction that is just lying there waiting to be taken advantage of, which is epitomized by the supermarket door. That you walk out, your principal task is get the groceries at the cars and get home and cook dinner. But the door's in the way. I can't open the door because my arms are full, or I've got a shopping cart in front of me. So Connect version 0.01 has for years, way before Connect existed, been attached to the door, and the door opens for me. It's not even my door. But it means that I offload the environment. And I'd say that that's really smart, even though it's a 1-bit computer, but the intelligence of that system is based on the person who chose to put it at that location, as opposed to a bank vault that allows me to offload complexity to the environment. But I just say that because that's a large part of what you just talked about. How do you integrate the background, that's like sensor networks and that type of thing, in with the foreground? Yeah, this last question.
It's kind of an abstract question. I live in Oregon, a little bit of setup. On the public radio for the last 18 months, I've been hearing about wolves and how they're doing in the environment. And more broadly, to jump ahead, my question is about understanding ecosystems. And I would always ask my wife, why are we hearing so much about wolves? And then once my brother-in-law visited and said, actually, it's a keystone predator. And when you reintroduce wolves, it kills lots of small animals that were eating off plants, and it changes the whole ecosystem. And it's actually a really important trace of an ecosystem. I didn't know that. And my question is, how do you figure out things that are hard enough to debug a browser or things? How do you understand systems, and how do you, in a way, isn't that a much harder problem of integrating all these things and understanding seamlessness than all the pieces we already understand?
Okay, so that's a great question, because it's a dilemma, and if I don't have a good answer, then I might as well just pack up and say forget everything I just said. So I'll do my best. You're absolutely right that anybody who says they can predict the effect on an ecosystem before they make the change is probably an idiot or delusional. or if they do get it right, they're just incredibly lucky. They're a statistical outlier, and I don't want to admit that they exist if they're that smart, because I couldn't live in a world where I knew there were people that smart when I'm not. What I would say is this. I'm guided. The first thing is, you are changing, there's a historian of technology named Melvin Kranzberg, and he has a few laws. Kranzberg's first law is, technology is not good, it is not bad, but nor is it neutral. It will be some combination of good and bad. Now what that says is that if you even put a paperclip or a toothpick into a culture that hasn't had one before, you are changing that society, you are changing the ecosystem. If you're making apps or computers or anything other digital technologies, you are already disrupting the ecosystem. You're introducing wolves all the time and you don't even know what a wolf is in that sense because you don't think about the ecosystem. So you're doing it anyhow, or else don't build anything. So that's not a good solution because we'll all starve. And there has to be some proof. So the best I could offer is, if you understand Kranzberg's first law and you understand the concern about what the impacts could be on ecosystems, can we make sure that we make best efforts to get as much on the positive side as possible and minimize the negative? And then the next question of that says, what's the composition of the team making the decisions? What are the skill sets? And I can tell you one thing is that a large part of computer science is not dedicated to dealing with these types of issues. So how do you bring people in who are social scientists? At Microsoft Research in Cambridge, England, for example, we have a group there which is led by a world-class sociologist and a PhD in cognitive science, next doctoral student of Don Norman's, and reporting to them are PhDs in electrical engineering and computer science. Rather counterintuitive in terms of most people's impression about how Microsoft Research works. Now, that is exactly so that we can try and understand that stuff. Xerox PARC was the first place to start doing that and bringing in Lucy Stechman and ethnographers and anthropologists. So we have to bring the human, we have to say, these are important things. We have a responsibility for the things we put into the culture. Let us structure our research organizations and our development teams to start to be better able to cope with this. But we will still get it wrong because we're human. And we should never apologize for being human. We should just acknowledge it and then take preventative actions. And so Kranzberg's second law, and I love this, is invention is the mother of necessity. And I love that because it's just such a wonderful play on words from the normal phrasing of that sentence. But it really says, you're human, get over it. You are going to get stuff wrong. But when you put it there in the first place, you have to be prepared for that and know that you're going to get some things wrong. And then actually do what Microsoft just did. If you got some stuff wrong in Windows 8, fix it. Apologize, sir, sorry, I didn't get it right, but I'm not perfect, but I'm going to fix it as quickly as possible, and then get on with it. It's that you have to understand that you have an obligation to fix it, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But in all of this, of course, I keep using these words like good and bad. What is your moral compass? What are your ethics, and what are your values that let you actually even have the measuring stick or the balance that lets you evaluate these things? And there's different currencies and different ways to do that. And for me, I think those are likewise conversations that need to take place throughout an organization so that reflect what are your values and then live by them. But it's an interesting thing. And by the way, those values don't interfere with business. You can do business and you can do it well if you're conscious because you've planned well and you can apply all of your design skills to finding out how to get the right balance. But that's the best answer I can give. But the main point is, we're deluding ourselves if we believe that we're not already doing it and messing the ecosystem without knowing about it. And I think there's enough things in the newspapers to reinforce that that might be true. Right? So I don't need to go into them because I'm Canadian. And I won't get into the country again if I say everything. Anyhow, anything else? This is the last one.
How do you evaluate Google Glass's technology against your three rules, so complexity, flow, and...
So I did notice I'm over time, so luckily I can dodge that question. I'm not going to talk about Google Glasses. What I will say is this. Anything that's going to have major impact in the next 5 years is already 15 years old. If you look up just the long nose of innovation in my name, you'll find an essay about that. Steve Mann has been written a great deal about that, as has, oh man, I keep forgetting his name. You'll find it. Just MIT Cyborg. You'll find the folks. There's a great deal of literature about head-mounted displays. It's an interesting literature. I can't and I never will comment on a product or a technology that I haven't tried and haven't used, and especially if it's from a competitor, okay? I'm sorry, I'm over time by about 5 minutes, so I have to stop. So thank you very, very much.